Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Talk the Walk session 10. Today's topic is disruptive innovation. So for talking the topic about disruptive innovation, I have brought two people who are really practicing day in, day out, throughout the life, multiple times, the concept. Rather than talking this as a university lecture or something we like to read in a newspaper. I have to my left Jayomi, who is the CEO, co-founder of Weeresinghe concept, which kicked off in 2003. Today has been very successful in Asia and now into the US markets. And I'm not going to talk about her, let her talk about her. And I'm turning to my right hand side, I have another gentleman who's Tony Weeresinghe, who's known to many of you, particularly in the IT innovations, who started his career with Oracle and then to many innovations which I'm not going to talk because he's going to talk about that. And today he's running U-Stock Trade, the portal that has freedom and no limitations. I would put it that way. And why again they are here? They are true disruptive innovators, disruptive thinkers. And before I let them explain their career and the background, I usually go with one or two startup questions, small questions. I'll turn to Tony. Are you afraid of failures?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
How about you?
Bit.
A bit. Okay, let me ask another question. Are you happy to take a lot of risks?
Yes, I am.
Why?
That has a kind of a kick. So I just love that.
You can kick someone or?
No. It's a kick that I get.
Yeah. And I'm again turning to Tony and ask another question. Do you believe you're a disruptive thinker?
Yeah, I do believe that I'm Christian.
Why?
Because everything that I've done, no one has done before.
Including today. How about you, Jayomi? Do you believe in disruptive thinking or sustaining the current products and building on top of that?
No, I believe in disruption.
Why?
I believe in, because disruption is sometimes, it becomes like a self-congratulatory buzzword right now, but it's actually like doing something, using low price product and then you kind of disrupt a mainstream product in the course. So that always gives something new or something refreshing to the world that never existed before as well. Mm-hmm. So that's what kind of makes me to believe in disruption and to be a disruptor.
I will go to one last question before I ask them to introduce them. Tony, you had the habit of quitting large enterprises. At least build it to the level and quitting. Is it because you think you're not fitting it anymore or because you think the disruptive thinking cannot be done there? What's your philosophy?
Well, I think why I always want to innovate, and sometimes in a large organization, when there's a need, they allow you, but when they reach that objective, then they become complacent. And that's the time when I think I'm out of here, because I don't
have my job.
Yeah.
Right. Just I want the audience to remind that you can ask any direct questions so long as they are relevant to the topic, and you can raise hand or stop me anytime because this is interactive and I know most of you are into new business ideas or thinking about it, thinking something different. I'll turn to Jayomi. Jayomi, would you like to give a 2 minutes introduction of you, what you started, where you are, why you're passionate about what you do, and your background?
Okay. So I come from a family that didn't have a single trace of entrepreneurship. They are all professionals. And back in 2003, when mobile was introduced as a kind of a tool that people carried for connectivity, I kind of saw the need, how the screen going to be the next fourth screen, especially for marketing communication, because I had the marketing background with me. And so that whole excitement kind of drove me to quit my full-time job and then start with zero salary for Weeresinghe, as well as even for the two partners that I brought along. So we basically went from almost having a paid salary and a full car, everything, to totally a zero. So from that moment onwards, of course, many told us that we were way ahead of the market, and mobile is not going to, it's going to be a fad. The mobile marketing communication is not going to sustain for a long time, but all that challenges actually made us more stronger. And also we were like kind of getting a lot of pressure from bigger guys who own the mobile channel itself. And that gave us a lot of immunity and made us to believe, no, this is something we are going to really work it on, just to kind of prove ourselves that this is going to be the next communication channel. So that passion grew us, Weeresinghe, to be not only in the marketing communications domain, but also for consumer interactions, and that went on, expanded to media, and well as a lot of subscription services. So that's how Weeresinghe became big, and now we are on another new phase of the company right now, which I will talk later.
Okay. Tony, similar way, what's your background? What made you think the way you think and where you are today?
Well, it's a different story with me. As a young guy, I was a good sportsman. So, I don't think in St. Thomas's Mountain, it's going to be very difficult to make my record to have 6 major colors that was there. And also I was interested in the studies. So being a Thomian, doing well in sports, studies was a no-no in that school. If you're a good sportsman, you hardly did any studies. So I was a bit of an exception. I was trying to get studies, but I was not good enough. I always wanted to be an engineer. So I wanted to join motor, which some of you did, but I never got the marks to get to motor. So being a sportsman, if you remember right, all the top companies take it. John Keels of the world. And I heard this word, everyone becomes a tea tester. You get a bike, so, and everyone becomes, and then you join a big firm. But because I wanted to be an engineer, I was thinking, I don't want to do this. I want to be an engineer. So the only choice I looked at Sri Lanka at that time, so that gives away my age, there was single scenario breaking black and white TVs. So I thought, I must join this firm. Because I want to be an engineer, I was manufacturing something with Sony. So I joined them as a management trainee, and my first job was being in the service center at the reception. So if your TV is broken and your driver brings it, I'm the one who takes it, writes a ticket, what's wrong. It was a social, what's the word, disgrace for all my friends, especially being a Thomian, 6 colors, having all this, and he's behind a desk, taking all the broken and writing the ticket. So and through that, I got interested in computers. My uncle had a firm, you know called Weatherbean Street in the neighborhood. So it Sinclair, so I got interested. He said, "You're very good at it. Come and join me." I said, "No, I didn't want to join the firm." So then, one day I was in Japan with my director. We were gone for a Sony show, and Fujitsu had come up with this first PC. And he said, I'm going around, and I got in, and I'm trying to write a small program. And then he comes back and says, "You're still going around." I said, "No, I'm just trying something." And the guy who was there saying, "This guy is good." Then he tells us, "Shall we buy this?" I said, "Why is this very expensive?" It was about ₹1,000,000 at that time. PCs, so we must say, "No, let's buy it." So fine, so he gave it. So he said, "What can you do?" I said, "I'll write an inventory program to you." So he took the PC, and after I was writing it, so I took it home and plugged it, and as you know, the power fluctuation, bang, the PC goes. And that was it. Maybe so that got me interested in computers, so I started doing, because I didn't get my degree, some courses, DMS WAN, for doing COBOL, basic, BCS, to get some qualification in the field. That's how I got interested in computers. And my first project was Citibank, writing a money market system. I used to work late at night, and I can remember the Citibank. There was an issue at the end of the month. There was a 2 cents difference. And he said, "You're not going home till you fix this. I don't care if you're staying 24 hours. So I told ITA, I'll give you the 2 cents. Here, 2 cents. He said, no. So the concept I learned was, it's not the 2 cents. If 2 cents is wrong in the program, something else is wrong. It took me 48 hours to figure it out. It was a rounding off error. It was not rounding off. So I made a standard rounding off, and it worked after 48 hours. I didn't go home. They didn't allow me to go home. And I had just started. And then I didn't come to work next day. When I come to the office, my boss says, I need to talk to you. I said, why? And Citibank says that they don't want any project leader. You are the project leader. I said, me? You want me to be the head? They said they did not accept anyone else. So that's how I started my career. I came, but I was good at marketing. I was quite a bit of a rebel, I would say. So when I was given to do something, I would build a product. I had this concept of product even from those days. I built a product called T-Mix. I still remember that. Tea Exporters Management Information System. And I used to sell it to all the tea exporters. That time tea was big. So then from there, I got to Oracle. So Don Dwyer put me into Oracle. And then Oracle and Sun had a bit of a tussle. 1992, the first Infotech. When not the current Prime Minister, our existing Prime Minister was the Science and Technology. I loved him at that time. He was a brilliant young man. Not now. But when he did that, Oracle and Sun took a bet saying, we are come to the market newly. So Sun was a hardware company, people would buy hardware, people would never play for software. So Sun and Oracle said, we'll make it 5 times. And I said, no, you will only make it 2 times. You might have it only twice. But after 2 years, we decided to meet. We met in Hong Kong, I can remember. And to see Oracle has done 5 times than Sun. And then the guy basically said, you need to move. I said, no, I've been a software. Why should I move? Long story short, he wanted to move and said, everything has a price. So I gave 10 times my salary so that he might save me. To my surprise, he said, yes. Then I didn't want to know how to get out of it. I said, no, that's basic. I want my rent paid. I want a driver. I want a car. He said, pull everything down and send. And he agreed. So then I joined Sun and I said, I want nothing for free. I said, what do you want from me? He said, we want you to do 3 times what you did for Oracle in 1 year. I said, that's a steep because you have not done, you have done only $80,000 and you want me to do $1 million. But I thought I'd take the challenge because worst comes scenario, I have so much of money. I will steal money. So when that happens, so the agreement was the first 2 years that I will work for them, and after the second year, the company, the local distributor will pay me the same thing. So I made the numbers, and then the chairman of the local company calls me and tells me, I can't pay you this. I said, why? This was the agreement. He said, my whole board together doesn't get that paid. So I said, but that was what you agreed, right? He said, yes, we agreed because nobody expected you to do the numbers. Because you were paid by Sun directly. So then I said, okay, I'm leaving. I don't want to fight with you. I'll leave. And he said, don't leave. This was a white elephant till you came. Take this and go. I said, how much do you want for it? He said, you're honest man, you name the price. So that's how Millennium was born. So we did a little bit, and then Millennium Story is a story different, and that's my company.
Right, thank
Sorry,
you.
it took a long time.
No, that's fine. So now I would like, because rather than my questions coming, audience to ask any question before I start few more questions firing out. You know, ask that question, yeah.
I have a question to Ronnie. Ronnie, so you seem to have been always one step ahead of some of the software leaders and I still remember early 90s when mainframes were still in existence. We used to say network is a computer. Right? How do you do it? I mean, is there a secret sauce behind it?
No, I always used to think out of the box. I used to always have I'm grateful that God has given me. I have always a social conscience, how to get more people involved. And I always used to think a mainframe, there's only a few that can get. But if you take a lot of small computers and connect them together, you have the power of a mainframe. So I used to look for companies that had this similar concept. And one such company was called Technical, which had the information bus, which was then later TIPCO, I don't know where they are now. But I liked it. So when you write code, you write it to the bus, not to the computer. And then it will talk to something. So it was a social concept, saying how do I get more people involved, affordability, and then, but to have the same power.
Jayomi, you've been silent for a while.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, for the audience clarity, you know, I'm sure the theory-wise you all know sustaining the evolutionary and revolutionary the thinking. But when it comes to disruptive, it's not only a new way of doing, but also killing an existing market or existing way of how the service or products being done. Now, my question is, how do you bring innovation? Can you bring innovation without killing the existing business? And if you want to kill it, how do you going to, you know, as a new person or new guy starting, you know, this kind of thinking, how do you get day-to-day, you know, operations running because you're killing the existing business while you're working, or if you want to bring, what's your thoughts around it?
Okay. See, most of the time, I mean, innovations can happen in evolutionary or a revolutionary way. Evolutionary say basically you kind of keep on adding certain features to the existing or kind of improving. That will kind of get you from 1 to n, you know, that's the kind of a growth. But when it comes to a total new concept, basically you create something from 0 to 1, right? So that's the time where people or the community, they get something totally fresh that never existed before. So how do you, I wonder whether it's like always like killing the existing, yes, that becomes on a disruption, but sometimes also kind of inventing something that was never there been before, something like, okay, what Facebook did even, right? That had a network effect, that was not there at all. But then over time, when it, especially Google and Facebook, when they came to advertising space, nobody kind of saw how the ad dollars are going to get shifted from mass media channels to that kind of digital channels, right? So then that became a total disruption. So how do you do that in a setup? Okay, how do you kind of cannibalize your existing cash cow and then kind of create something new? Well, in a large organization, I feel it's going to be a very difficult task because of bureaucracies are involved, and definitely you don't want to kind of take such risk. I mean, I was like reading a bit of this Satya Nadla's book, Hit Refresh. So I saw even how a large company like Microsoft, their whole dilemma of like going to cloud, whereas Amazon went, how that cash giving server business they didn't want to give. Mm-hmm. So if you were to kind of create that kind of innovation or a disruption, I feel it should happen in a adjacent platform or something totally outside your company or something that sits outside and with a small team, because that's why I love the idea of startup. And in my company, it's like about now third startup I even started, which they always kind of stay remotely to the main organization, because in a small space is where you have the space for new thinking. But when you kind of put it inside a large organization or a large team, that new thinking doesn't have the room to kind of grow. It's more than the nimbleness, that's the new thinking that kind of creates innovation. So I think that's the way I see how, I mean, if you want to kind of disrupt, then you can't have that disruption inside the main organization. It will never happen. You have to kind of put it out. So that's how I see it.
So taking from there and connecting to what you said earlier, Tony, when you said about the businesses, that the established business, how we walked away and started things, and also she is also saying on the other hand, sometimes the existing frameworks doesn't support. Now I'm turning to you and asking Tony, when you have to go through all the natural barriers of starting this thing up and new way of working, building it and selling it, all finding new networks to sell it, new customers, why do you do that when you have a set up established business giving you money? Why do you want to do that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think in my life, I'm blessed that I really thank God. Money never grew. When I started Millennium, I told everyone, you got to be a shareholder. And I was not a firm believer of giving anything free. So I told them that you had to beg, borrow, or steal. But one thing I'll do, if you put a rupee, I'll put a rupee for you. So it was not only for the professionals at that time. My driver, PM, you name it, all had shares. So it was the first company that had shares, and everyone was doing it. I think we have created about, I can easily say very close to about $100 million. Now, coming to your question, so that has been my concept. So money never drove me, passion drove me of doing something different. And I just wanted to put Sri Lanka on the map when I started doing. My passion was, I wanted to be the world's best. People laughed at me. Then I told the staff, as we started, in 3 years I wanted to be on the campus. Their question was, today we don't have money to buy our own tea, we are pulling from our pockets, and that's how we have our tea. And we want to be on campus. So I used to always think that huge spirit. So whenever something becomes stale, my natural instinct is I can't stay. Even if I'm getting a loan. To be honest, I was very afraid of this. I was paid significantly as a foreign CEO. Which I didn't have to do anything, just working there, just sitting on the board for a time.
Okay, I have few more questions to bring along that, but I again open because it's an interactive session, people can ask questions. I haven't seen any online, there are few online questions. Okay, there's a question that is relevant to the one that you answered. Probably if you want to take it again in a subtle way, can disruptive innovation actually challenge the big businesses?
Of course. I think the whole, as I said earlier, the whole idea of disruption is basically when you create something at a low price, and then once you scale it up and it becomes a threat to a mainstream or prime businesses, that's where the kind of a disruption, that the technical or original meaning of disruption came. So we have seen it happening in many industries. I mean, everyone knows about Uber to Netflix to all that, which actually they started off wanting as I think more people to use. I think that's what even like Tony had that idea of how do you enroll more people to kind of use it, that kind of a network, how do you create that kind of a larger network. So that's the kind of a platform that gives a birth of a disruption at a low price. I mean, if more people to have, then of course the price would play a bigger role. And then after some time, what happened once you scale it up, though you may start small, then that becomes kind of a threat or a major barrier or challenge for a well-established business, especially if they are using old ways or old technologies to kind of cater. So we saw that happening in many industries, and it still continue to happen. So that's my viewpoint in that.
Thank you. Any questions before I go to one more interesting question? Audience, any questions? Right. Tony, this is a disruptive question. When do you draw a line to stop this crazy thinking?
I don't think I'll ever.
I'm asking as an innovator. Like
No, I don't think I will. That's the day I cross my hands. Because that's, what I've done now is only 10% of what I wanted. There's so much more to do. So I don't think I will ever stop doing these crazy ideas, which my family also finds it a bit difficult. They're saying this man is going off his head. But that's me. I don't think I will, because the day that stops is the day that I think that I will not do anything. Because then I'll be a bottleneck to the disruption.
Okay. Look at him. Having said that, the question comes to you now. Now imagine you hired him. I know you will not, but let's imagine you hired. And he's thinking, and he's not going to draw a line. And if you're the CEO, I'm just asking very seriously, reality is that he keep thinking, he keep innovating, he keep doing things different. You have to be very conscious about your P&L. I stop there and ask your thoughts, because now change your hat.
Okay.
To be that place, rather than, I know you're CEO, but just wear the CEO hat only. Forget about the rest.
But still, I would love to have that kind of people always, because I still want people who work for me also to have that entrepreneurial trait. So if they keep on thinking something new one after the other, then I would always want to see how I could facilitate them, like how I could then spin off another entity for them to run with their idea. So I don't know, I'm so comfortable with that, what he said.
Okay. Tony, when you look at the failures of people, I know that how much you say that you have disruptive thinking and you have new ideas. I'm quite sure at least a few times you have failed in your thinking or implementing something. The reason I'm bringing this is that to encourage people not to stop. Would you like to share some of the thoughts?
Sure. So, a few failures I share with more than many, but I'll say a quick one. So when I started, when Millennium was, we had a terrific time. It was the first company from day one we were profitable. First year we were profitable. But in 2001 was our first loss. And the loss was not a normal loss. Everybody wrote off Millennium. It was 600 million. Which I was building this campus, they said this man is crazy, he's lost, and the news got out in the market. Then we were working on, I got a big project, and I encourage people to think out of the box something to do. There were two young guys that was challenging the way I was doing things, and I knew they were wrong, but they were adamant to do this. So my thing was, let them learn the lesson. But it cost the company $200,000 because we got penalized for delaying to implement the project on time. So that was an example that I learned on failure. That sometimes, these young guys have, but you have to guide them. And I overcame that the second time. Then I told these guys to say, I want a trading platform that is in 100 microseconds. And everyone looked at me and said, you want us to go faster than physical thing of reality. It's not possible, it's not done. Right? And why are you asking us to do this? The world is not. And I knew speed was going to come. This time, I took the big guy and said, I'm not giving you. I put them in the boardroom and said, you're not coming out till you figure it out. I said, I give you the direction, you figure it out. And they did that. And that's what made London Stock Exchange interesting for us. So I learned from music doing that. But on new stock trade, when I started, I thought I'm going to be rocket science, disrupt the whole place, run. And I knew that it would happen in a few months. But to my surprise, in 6 months we became the 6th largest trading platform in the US. And then all hell broke loose. I would tell you one saying, wow. And I was profitable. 6 months after invested in growth. And but then all hell broke loose. The regulators came, said you need to stop this. And I was like, why should I stop? I never anticipated that kind of roadblocks that is going to come, because all the big brokers got together, put pressure on the regulators, stopped me for 8 months. Now that's a failure on my part, but I didn't think this. I thought, it's getting because this is a regulated market. So I had to rethink. 8 months, no business. I had to get a law firm, fight the case, and because we won, they put a rule only for me, not the industry, to kill the profitability. So it is a failure on my part. So when there's a failure, I look at myself first. It's always easy for us to put the blame on someone. But if I'm the head, it is a failure on me that this is not happening. Either I didn't guide the team properly, either I didn't think of all these things. But the good thing is, when you analyze yourself, you will find the solution. Sometimes it's painful, you realize it. And to me, it was hugely painful because my friends told me, hey, you're doing this, you're going to lose all your money. Where you could go to Maldives or Bahamas and put your leg up and live comfortably for the rest of your life. This is, which the day I had to look at mortgaging my house to be alive. Right? So sometimes it's painful, but if you stay focused on where you want to go, you will find a way to come out.
So, connecting to that question, maybe this is something interesting to everyone, because people talk about, like I said, doing business is as you do usually in established product market is simple. Now, when you come up with an idea, Jayomi, how do you assess whether the market is ready to receive this and the regulatories are ready to accept this, and you have the people with the same pace in the organization run. So organizational regulatories, and there is a bunch of people waiting there. How do you assess all of them? Because is it just your thought, or you do some formal assessment?
Yeah. Well, being very honest, I actually didn't do much of assessment in any of the new ventures or new products I launched. My whole principle was like, you kind of ready, fire and steer, rather than you ready, aim and fire.
Okay.
Because sometimes, when you do a lot of thinking or assessment, that's where kind of sometimes you get the inertia that kind of, kind of anchors you to this position with so many what if questions. But having said that, I don't underestimate the kind of pressure or from regulatory or from the market acceptance. But that's why I always believe if you are having an innovation or something that market is not yet seen, that's a kind of a time that you need to kind of, rather than going one off totally big, you kind of test it to the small market segment.
So I need to interrupt you. You said that you do not do that, but the question is more lies on, now I'm going to the opposite side.
Okay.
How do you assess a market if you want to assess that does not exist today?
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to do that, is there a way?
Frankly, I actually, my market assessment, I mean, taking example of Weeresinghe's entire concept of mobile marketing, assessment actually we went to wrong clients first. We felt mobile going to be the thing, but that's kind of your intuition, right? I didn't have any solid data to kind of support back in 2002 and 3 that mobile is going to, I mean, there weren't much companies who was doing mobile marketing at that time. So when we built this and when we had that kind of a subscriber base, we went that the first client, I mean, all the marketing agencies love bigger clients, right, with bigger budget. So you kind of, one of the few was to kind of walk into his Unilever, and they were like, you know, they actually deemed that I'm like totally crazy to kind of promote them a channel, which was like, that time, remember, it's like totally a feature phone. And he said like monochrome, and you talk about 160 characters, whereas we talk about rich visual impacting advertising, and how are you going to kind of, you know, compete or even think this is going to be a fit enough channel for marketing communications. But invariably the client did a good thing to me. He said, go, probably Unilever is not the place, go and talk to someone who wants to like talk to a small number of people. So that time actually he said it in a way to kind of, I know, like to totally discourage me that it's not going to be, but it turned out to be that actually I learned from it. I knew, okay, I need to test this with a smaller client actually, not with a big guy who wants to talk to the mass market. So then we ended up going to like a very boutique restaurant, supposed to be on WTC. And when we said you could do one-to-one communication, they were like, yeah, I don't want to talk to the entire Colombo because my prices were pretty high. And they were supposed to be kind of a little high-end restaurant. Back in 2003, they had something similar to NFC type payment system as well. Mm-hmm. So I said, I want to talk to these people who are around WTC. So I think mobile might going to work if you claim to have that kind of a base registered on mobile. So that's how it happened. So sometimes, yes, the bigger markets you may not assess, but once you kind of test it with a smaller segment, and if it works, I mean, even Facebook, for example, they tested with their university students, right, which never existed. If you ask people, would you want to put up your pictures at that time in a bigger mass, I mean, they might say, no way, hell no, right? But when they tested it in the campus of Harvard, then yes, they realized, of course, there's a market. Then that's how they scale it up. So similar thing, I think I also did. If I would have had asked people, would you want, like, I know nowadays, yes, no one wants to look at even SMS advertising. It has become like such a pain. But at that time, if people asked, they would say like, hell no, I don't want. But then we didn't do that. We just actually started small with a smaller client who had the need. And then when that tipping point happens, when many people used mobile as a device more than connectivity, then that mass adoption happened. And now Unilever is like one of the biggest who users, not only mobile, the entire digital spectrum.
I'll ask a short question with a short answer, then I'll turn to the audience. Tony, are you more to go with intuition or reasoning, formal reasoning, or I said conscious reasoning?
I do have an intuition side of me that I know what it is. But for me, I think the most successful is the social conscious. If I can do something to empower the mass market, then it works.
Questions now?
I think we need to address this question, so
okay.
I can address.
You can ask the question.
The concept behind use of trade, I think everyone would love to.
So the concept behind use stock trade is very simple. Okay, it's a bit of a different context than to many companies. The whole idea why use stock trade came is because I left the London Stock Exchange to do a charity. That is, the charity is to educate underprivileged children around the world with international boarding schools. And when I did research, all my friends said, we are financial big firms that we will give you money, but don't come all the time. So I spoke to UNICEF, I spoke to a lot of places, and I found that sustainability is the nightmare. And I was not in a habit to go in the begging bowl and say, help me to keep this school running. I spoke to some people who have started schools, who had similar visions, but just stuck with one school, and to get that one school going was important. So then I told my wife, hey, I don't like this, but I don't want to give up my idea of building the schools. So why don't we create a commercial company that will sustain the schools? So that's how you stock trade. Why you stock trade? All my life, I made the rich richer. I've ordered with stock exchanges, big brokerage houses, all the rich getting richer. And when I looked at the world at that time, it was getting, and when I looked at the Oxfam report, if you have heard, it said 1% of the world owns 50% of the world. I said, you don't need an economist or a rocket scientist to know the problems that we have in any country. The terrorism, everything, it's all economic. One person controls 50% of the world. It's probably now even getting worse. So I wanted to do something, and I said what I know. And when I looked at the richest people, I found one common thing with everyone. They all had stocks. Either they are owned or anything else. Bill Gates now investing, Warren Buffett's investing, George Soros, they take everyone. And I said, if it works for the 1%, it should work for the 99 as well. The problem is the 99 couldn't access it. There's this myth, this is difficult. The retailers are losing is because the big guys are playing them out. So then I said, okay, I want to democratize it. I want to take it to all parts of the world and teach them how to make money to be like the 1%. They might not be like the 1%, but you making $1,000 or $10,000 a year is life-changing to many short-terms. So that's what got me, and I didn't want to talk to my friends because everyone said you will never get the license. It's difficult, like when I was presenting this in one of the universities, big in MIT actually, the professor came up and said, I have a question. I tell all my entrepreneurs, pick an industry that there is no regulation so that you can innovate, and there is no big banks and politicians because it's tough to find. He said, you have gone against all my norms. You have picked an industry that has the biggest regulator in the world, is the SEC of the United States, and you are going to fight all the people who have money. I said, I'm not fighting them. So people were surprised that I even got the license. You have to get a license. You can't just start a company. So when I started it, my argument to the regulators was, you remember the Wall Street protest? You remember people coming and shouting and telling the 99% has woken up. And they barricaded the Wall Street for a few weeks. So my thing to the regulator was, how about, without them protesting, being inclusive, get them inclusive in this system. It's not a bad system. It's talking about companies doing well. So if you want to collect more money and you're doing well, and you're making money, you're sharing that with the other sort of people, becoming a shareholder. So it's something good that people don't realize that is there. So I said, if you give me this license, I can bring those people in. And there won't be protest anymore because they're also making money. So I wanted to build something that eliminates all the institutions to protect the small guy. So that's how I'm the first retail stock exchange, as you call it. There are no institutions. Right? So it's a peer-to-peer exchange. You want to buy, someone wants to sell. But I also knew that this doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to come and buy Apple and if no one is selling. So I came up with this concept called the super user. Today, in the world, it's market makers. They make the market, you come in. So they sometimes are umpire and the player as well. They move the market. But the super user is different. They will look at the best price in the market and give it to you. So they can't make the market. If you want to buy and there's no one selling, the superior steps in and sells it to you at the market price as the best fashion for you. So that was my concept. So my concept was never make money from my people on their shares, nor their money. So then I looked at it to say, how do I give them the same level playing field as the big guys? I don't know if you know, all these big guys, when you go and invest in a bank, your money, they have 100 million, and they get a margin on that 4 times, so 400 million. They trade 300 million, they are saying they won't touch your money, but it's your money, it's not their money. And that is why when a trading thing goes wrong, you also lose your money, is because of that. So it's not their money, they're trading on your money. So I said it's not fair. You who has $1,000 can only buy for $1,000. That's it. But the big guy can do 400 million billions because they are given this leverage that money that they don't have. So the only way to counterattack that is if I settle you real time. To give you the same opportunity with your $1,000 to trade up to $1 million in the day. Right. The only thing is you might have to do it sometimes. So then I came up with this concept of the world's first mover has done it, settling you real time. Sri Lanka is T+3, US is T+2. But when you buy a stock in stock trade, and if you sell it, you have your money immediately. So you can reinvest in another stock, sell it, have it back. So now it's unlimited for you. You can even trade 100 million, but you will do more trades, but it's the same level playing field. So to stop the big guys coming, I put a 10,000 order limit. Because otherwise what happens is a large guy comes and says, I want to buy $1 million. Till his thing is filled, you're at the bottom of the queue. By that time the price has moved. And when you come up on top of the queue, you get at a worse price. So now it's 10,000, so it's very small. Because there are a lot of big guys coming and saying, we'll come to your platform if you increase it. I said, no. I didn't build it for you. I built it for the normal people to come in. And the good news is, it has worked. Democratization worked. My first $1 millionaire platform in 1 year is a student from Missouri who came with $500. He would have never in his lifetime, in 1 year. Right? And my staff was professional. I don't run because I'm bad at running operations. So I get professionals to do that. I don't do thinking. They are saying this guy is doing something wrong. It can never happen in our professional career. 20 years in trading, this guy is doing something wrong. And I said, no, that's the platform we created. So now there are about at least very close to 100 guys who are ready to hit $1 million, which they will never. And that is why I brought it to Sri Lanka because I'm Sri Lankan. I'm having a tough time with the regulators, central banks, and even people. Because we always seem to run our people down. Oh, can they do it? I said, we have never given them the opportunity. Our stock market here is different. That's the problem. This is an insider trading method. We spoke to some of the brokers, and their first question is, how do I know what's going to happen? I'm saying, what are you guys doing? There is analytical data, identify. No, they don't. They are waiting for news so that they can jack it up and let the guys lose. You can't do that in the US market. So it's huge. You're talking of 30 trillion. You're talking of something like 200, 300 million trades that take place. There is no chance. And if you look at the Colombo stock market, you can wait, looking, saying, is the price moving, is the price moving? But if you look at the US market, it moves like this. So to make $50 a day is no big deal. And that's what I'm trying to teach everyone, saying forget the big money. Little drops of water make a mighty ocean. You made $50 a day. In the week you will have $250. In the month you will have $1,000. If you keep doing that, you will have the $12,000 in a year. And that's not difficult to do. You make 50 months. So that was thinking behind to democratize the wealth. And by democratizing, I take just $1 from you to sustain the charity.
All right. So, with that explanation of liberalizing, democratizing the market, I have a different question, particularly to a Sri Lankan woman. Many of those talk about diversity and inclusion and how difficult it is to bring up children. At once you had 2 babies. Do you remember that? Now don't ask me. I'm talking about 2 babies, different babies. One is your child and one is your brainchild. So, and you did it when you were pregnant. I remember that reading about you. So what is your message to some of the females here particularly?
There are only like 3.
No, they had a little accident actually.
Okay.
Something happened.
Yeah. No. So yeah, I would have loved to see more females in the room. So that also, like, I mean, it definitely, representation is right now low. So that's what I kind of also want to kind of give a message out to all the females. I mean, of course, must be online streaming. So yeah, I mean, our culture kind of most of the time inhibits or doesn't kind of advocate for women, especially when you become a mother, to kind of continue your career or continue to be in your professional, to play your professional role. But I kind of see it as such, I mean, if I had a daughter, I mean, I actually have 2 sons, but if I had a daughter, I would not wish anything less for her just because of her gender, right? Because I still remember my kid comes and talks, like, one day he came and said, Ammi, girls can equally kick hard like boys after playing soccer. So I said, yeah, of course they can kick very hard just like you guys, you know. So
doing it all the time, isn't it?
of course, right? So so I kind of, my question is, why when it comes to our professional career, not even in the university, we never felt anything less compared to our male counterparts, right? But why when it comes to career, that we always feel little less, or we feel all these challenges, that something that women should not handle or shouldn't take it up. So coming to the question of my child and the company, of course they are both same, they are both 15 years. I look at him and look at the company, it's like there's a nice kind of a relationship on how they even both grew, had like, you know, growing pains. Now they are more settled, I can see in both of them. But it's your, basically my idea is like how badly you want it, you know, how badly you want to make a change or want to kind of create an impact. That is what drives.
How do you strike a balance?
See, I really don't have a measurement of whether I'm doing equally on all my roles, but it's like we all are, even whether you are a mother or a father, or even if you're single, we have so many roles to manage. It's like a kind of managing a portfolio of yourselves, right? So in that side, I see more roles you handle. Sometimes it has a nice connectivity, like you might learn something from a particular role to another side. So being a mom has made a lot of kind of insight for me, even to manage a team or manage a millennial team that who's in my company right now, because I can see a kind of a connection that I see in both of them. So managing, I set my boundaries. Of course, I ask for help, but by doing so, it doesn't that I don't make one role whole of me. I don't make my work role as whole of me. I try to kind of give whatever I need to give for my children in terms of education and value, and same time I also kind of course work towards empowering my team and trying to kind of, you know, take them along with me in this journey. So, and by doing this, I don't know, a lot of people I know from my personal network to school to the places I go and talk, I kind of create a spark, especially in girls, that for them to feel, no, we can do this, you know, it's not something that you shouldn't see motherhood as a kind of a inhibiting factor, rather it's like a more of an enabler, because it kind of expands your entire paradigm or your capacity. So capacity is actually a state of mind, so it definitely stretches it. So
right.
When you enter that, I'm sure, as I say, bring it on, you know. So
Okay, any questions?
How do you manage people to carry out your motivate people and create innovative and disruptive ideas internally in your workplace? Consider both of you.
Both of you. So, question to both of you, how do you encourage,
Motivate people.
motivate people?
Well, my side of motivation is to make them that they share a vision. And that has helped. I'm very proud of the team that I have. I have a very small team. They're all during the struggle, nobody wanted to leave. Because they believe in the vision. They want to be a part of that vision of democratizing the wealth, money in people's hands, as well as with the profits we get to educate the underprivileged children in the world. So that keeps them going. And sometimes you are sad because when they go for interview to these biggest universities, and now today, when they ask them how much they want, they request a salary that much bigger than what they get. But they still don't move away. Is because they have the same vision that I have, and they feel the pain, and when they have a belief of sense that we will achieve this. We had some regular hiccups, we had all these things, but they also saw in 6 months what we could be. So that's the motivation factor, and I always come, and whenever I come, I talk to them, and to see that their alignment of their life and our alignment of where we are going, there's a similar path, so that they are comfortable in what they're doing.
Yeah. So for me, I think quite similar to what he said, but it's like how powerful you could articulate your vision. It's like power of storytelling. And since I have a marketing background, I believe I can definitely kind of do that kind of articulation so that they all kind of believe in it and want to create that kind of a difference or the future in the society. So from mobile to advertising technology, and even other two startups, that one is actually into pharmaceutical space, which they wanted to kind of create that kind of a revolution or the movement, and they really want to see it making it happen. So my role probably, like, I mean, each time when I talk, each time we talk about how, when that happens, what kind of empowerment or what kind of effect it would create in the society, so that really drives them. So I would see that's the best way to kind of get your team motivated, not extreme, I mean, not cash rewards, not those. It's like getting them to believe your story.
I'll probably stay with you and ask to briefly explain an opportunity to tell about what your new thinking or a new disruptive model that you're building outside the Z Messenger.
Yeah, so we all know, I mean, now it's like digital has taken a bigger role in terms of many areas, payments to communication. So what we wanted was not to be another digital agency. Rather, how do we kind of create this automated platform that will kind of automate the entire advertising process. So basically, the new product that we are working on is like it's called, the domain is called AdTech. Basically, it kind of collects your digital, the little trails that you leave when you browse and so on, and then it kind of creates a digital profile of who you are, what your interests, so on, and then that will help your online advertising to automatically kind of find you and place the correct at the right time. So this basically kind of seen as a disruption to a traditional media agency, because they used to rely a lot on market research data, and then they are the people who kind of decide whether this particular advertisement should be shown on 8 o'clock prime time news. But similar format will be replicated on online, but there won't be any humans involved. It's through all machine learning. Basically, since it knows your profile and it has its predictive ability to kind of show the relevant advertisement to you. And plus, it has another learning capacity. It will know if you don't take any action towards it, it won't keep on showing this ad over and over because it know you ignored it. So it has the ability to what we call like frequency capping. It will stop advertising to you because it knows that you are not, probably you don't have a particular interest. So in that way, we are helping advertisers to kind of save a lot of ad dollars which spent online, at least by 13 to 15% by giving this precision targeting method, which I mean, even as consumers, I mean, you might also not see nuisance ads anymore. So that's the whole idea of the.
According to your lifestyle.
Yeah, so this is called Ad Studio. So we are working on it, and this is the same platform that I opened office in US to kind of, expand.
Okay, I'll have one more question before I end up.
So, for disruptive innovation and disruptive innovation for any innovation, do you think money or the financial constraint or the financial risk is a blocker or limiting factor? And if so, how to counter that?
Well, when you come disruptive, right, you're basically taking an existing industry and trying to change it. I want to also clearly say the myths of disruption. Technology is disruptive. That's very clear. But that itself will not disrupt a business. I can take a very good example, is retail banking. All these new technology coming, these banks will go away. No, they will adapt, online banking and all that. So it disrupts the way they're working, but the retail banks are still thriving. So there is this myth, just because you come up with some innovative technology that you're going to disrupt. But the same way, if you look at it, there are technologies that came that was not that are completely disruptive, is because an organization's thinking was entirely different. The best thing that I can tell you is the Kodak moment. We used to call it the Kodak moment. Some 182 patents under their company, they came with this digital photography long before everyone else. But they forgot that there is this new technology that is coming called mobile phone, and there is something called Instagram that is what people like because they can share. The giant was wiped out because they believe now that they are going to stay. So if you look at disruption, if there is a need, social need, right? And even if people will block your money, will not want to give you money. If you ask, is blockchain disruptive? As a technology, is yes. As a business, not yet. Right? Now they attach blockchain to cryptocurrency and say, crypto market has crashed. What do you guys think? Right? So, as technology, yes, but as a business, if there is a social conscience of there is a need for business, like if you look at my example, the retail e-channel, everyone told I will fail. That time, internet penetration in Sri Lanka was just 1%. Everyone said, one, the doctors will not agree because they are getting cash into their pocket and they don't want the inland revenue to come. The hospitals are the monopoly, will not. And I found a way. I got the pharmacies in there. So you don't have to go in, you can go to Anura to the pharmacy and you can do your channel. So if because there's a social need. So if you come up with something that has, and especially now it's easy to come up with a lot of disruptive technology because the new generation is entirely different. If you look at Generation Z, I tell everyone, or Z as we call it here, right? Mobile phone is their life. They know nothing else. So if you want them to be a part of your business, you've got to get them involved. So if you pick by technology itself, yes, you are disrupting the way it works, but you're not going to disrupt the industry. I think that's a big myth that people have. I came up with this beautiful thing, and then it goes no. But if you're coming with the technology that challenges the business model, right, then you become truly disruptive. Likewise, payments, they should have taken over. There shouldn't be swifting. Why not it? Because the business model was not disruptive. Technology was, or business model. So if you can come up with a disruptive business model and a technology to match it, then it's going to be very difficult for them to stop it.
Primary model, then the technology, not the other way.
Yeah, technology will always disrupt the way people are doing business, but it won't disrupt the business.
Absolutely. You have any say on that? Any? You want to add anything?
Yeah. You were asking about with the financial capacity would act as a. See, reflecting on my examples, I mean, to start even Z Messenger back in 2003, none of the banks, I had an initial requirement of seed capital of 1 million rupees, not dollars. So none of the development banks agreed to give a single cent, and instead actually they really went and asked me to start a supermarket when I went with my business plan. So, but see, of course I found my 1 million through a distant relative who lived in Norway. Somehow convinced him, at least he was a little bit more open to technology. But then the initial year we actually grew organically. We had a smaller client base that helped us with our working capital, and up till the company came to the 10th year, we didn't have a single investment, so to say. We funded it by our own selves with our own cash generation, and only after 10 years I got an investor from Indonesia that actually pumped the initial capital to the company. So sometimes I don't know, I don't always want to stay for financials to make it right. And even the new startup that is on the pharmaceutical delivery, I still have a requirement of $1 million as a funding. But I really, with my bad experience, I don't want to go and talk about it even to the banks, because they might ask, where's your regulatory certificate to operate in this space and so on. But instead, what we did was we started with a smaller base, catering to urban population where the pharmacies were concentrated. Now after 8 months, we see a massive month on month, a 30% increase in the number of people who subscribe to that service. So that gives enough cash for us to kind of operate or like to meet our day-to-day expenses. And with that, I'm hoping to, of course, go and meet investors. So to start or to scale to a certain level, even without financial, if you have that kind of a base of clients, you can kind of convince or get them to subscribe, then you can actually run it without it. So,
right. I think
just to answer your question, that's why you stopped paying.
it's Ronnie.
I think Tony is willing to give each one of you $500.
Like $500, like Oprah.
No, that's the whole idea.
I can help you.
There go. Now, I was talking to Anura this morning. It's $500. Many people have written to me saying, help our country. You've been an innovator, you think out of the box. What can you do? I get a lot of weekly messages. I'm not even opening my box now. So for the last 2 days, it's over 500,000. So people think that there is. So I was thinking, what is the fundamental problem that we have? It is mainly the economic situation. So these politicians can tell any lie, promising something small that is not relevant for their life. And these politicians probably thrives that people are poor, because then you are valuable for all those stores. So I'm just about to start another charity because we have 30,000 graduates that come out from university. So I'm starting another charity. I initially put in my own money, but I want to give $500 to each of these 30,000. That's $15 million. Because I believe that if you teach them, so what I'm doing is, I give you 500, you cannot take it home. You've got to trade. The day you make $1,000, I'll take the 500 back, now it's your money. Do anything you want with it, go and make it. And if you look at the countryside, if you look at Sri Lanka, we have a huge budget deficit. Every year we have. The reason being, we have to borrow to pay off the borrowed money loans. But if you take 100,000 Sri Lankans to the scheme, right, that's 3 years, 30 make $10,000 a year. We have $1 billion in our country, which we don't have to go to the begging board and sell part of our country to get this, to use the budget books. And if they guys make 50,000, if a US guy can come and get $1 million, I'm sure our guys are very capable of making 50,000. Then you'll have 5 billion. Accomplish problems. So that is what I want to do. I don't want to do Band-Aid, I don't want to call. I've been building houses around. That's why I want to do education. But now this idea came to me and I said, now if you look at it, she's looking for $1 million, saying I want to do with 15 million. When you look at the concept, there is a diaspora of Sri Lankans abroad. Getting $500 from each one is no big deal. If they understand that is sustainable. Because I control use stock trade, I can build it into the system that you cannot withdraw this was fine. Otherwise, giving things free
in these countries.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
But if we start doing things like that, right, then the politicians can't go and say, you're a graduate, you didn't get a job, join organization, let's go to the street and shop. That's it, no, you don't have that. You're making money. I'm starting a small group. I have my seed capital. I don't have to go and give my underwear also to the bank to get money now. So once we start doing it, and what I'm trying to tell the students is you have to succeed. So if you are brilliant, or you don't have to be a student, if you are brilliant in analyzing and fundamentals of stocks and telling people, share it with others, the success is when everyone wins. So that's my new project that I want to get. But it's not easy. Doing charity is more difficult than money issues. You have to get the legal side sorted out. I want to make sure that it's not a failure. Because I'm taking money from hard-earned people like you. I had many Sri Lankans who have said, let us know where to start. I said, no, I don't want your money. Let me first get everything sorted out. So that way, when you're socially conscious and do something, of course, I tell them, hey, I want you to know that use stock trade is making money. Because I have got a license, I can't say these come from charity and I can't charge you the dollar. But we are giving an opportunity. And I said, it's okay, you stop trading money because that's also going to educate some underprivileged children who could have never thought of going to school. So there's a ways, each one can contribute. Sometimes it's not big, but the impact of this, I think, will change the way that we work in our country. Because now, when they have money, they won't get caught to all these lies that people are saying.
I think it's an opportunity for you guys to go back to university.
I'm telling you, I'm working hard to get rupee conversion, though it's permitted. It's a very, it's a nightmare for you to do it. I had already got there till the dollar crashed and Central Bank got scared. But I said it's a wrong thing. If they start making money, you'll have more dollars and the dollar won't crash.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Jayomi, you want to add any last thoughts before we wind up? Or anything to say for a young entrepreneur or young thinker, innovator?
Yeah. So having traveled the world, seeing different markets and seeing Sri Lanka, I think the biggest why we have, I mean, we've been a kind of a more of a service nation. We have not, I don't think we still have a single unicorn in our country, a single, I don't see much in the horizon, but there's a big difference I saw when I was in US. How, I mean, I'm sure Tony can also kind of share his thoughts, but I saw they are driven with how badly they need things, you know. I don't know whether it's our cultural thing, but we were taught complacency. I mean, we were taught to be happy with what we have, and philosophically I don't have any issue with that, but when it comes to business or when it comes to taking initiative or taking risk, I think most of the successful entrepreneurs, I was at this EY forum a month ago in California. I saw like small, I mean, people out of Texas, small like mothers who kind of went on making $1 billion ventures. It's totally driven by how badly they needed that success, how badly they needed to make a mark in the society. So if we can kind of cultivate that from our time, from our schools, I think we would see a much better output from Sri Lanka.
Right.
Because I was once like quite discouraged to learn. My 10-year-old son created a comic series and he made me to print it, and he wanted to go and actually sell to his friends. And his prices were ranging from $100 to $800, depending on who needs it more. I mean, who needs it badly. So he would say one guy $800 and another guy $100. But then the next thing I got was a call from school and saying we should not encourage money mind kids in the school. And so it's like, I understand given the parents' background, she was hinting at me, okay, because I was an entrepreneur, your kid can't use school as a marketplace, you know. But then I was thinking, isn't this the same kind of schools when we reach our 14, 15, make us to think, okay, be entrepreneurs, you know, start your ventures. But in your smaller days, you totally discourage that spirit, right? So unless we change it, unless we teach our kids, because there won't be any entrepreneur coming out if everything was given, right? It always comes out of the need or how bad you need it. So if we can cultivate that, I'm sure we will see a much better output from our youth rather than taking to streets. You will see a better Sri Lanka, definitely, not a middle income but a high income nation.
Right. With the time limit, I think we have to now wind up. My wind up comments are basically 3 bullets I give as usual. Number 1 is you need to go out of comfort zone, not afraid of failing and trying it out. But I think the message coming from both is that there should be a social need. There should be understanding of the market before you start thinking differently. Technology doesn't make a big difference if you don't have that idea. Number 2, I think, is you need to make sure that there is a clear understanding of the similar wavelength people in the organization. Sometimes it's hard to do in large organization, well structured, but you have to think differently. So you need to come out of that zone of large enterprise mindset to innovation, startup mindset. Number 3, I put it in this way so that everyone remember, that's Bill Gates' statement. You're not at fault for born with being a poor, but you're at fault if you die as a poor. I hope that you agree with these comments, and I wind up. Please look at us YouTube, because this is created mostly for wide access. So please look at and give us comments. And before we end up, I have a token of appreciation for 2 great people who have been traveling and particularly coming here today with your busy schedules. Thank you so much, Tony. I hope this is the right one. And Jayomi, once again, all the best with your ventures happening.
Thank you.
In other parts of the world. Thank you for coming today.